Get to the church blind! Get to the church blind! Go! Now!
I'm Pete Mitchell, and he's Peyton Jones, and you're listening to Hardcore Church Planning, the companion podcast for the Church Planner Podcast and Church Planner Magazine. Each week, we'll bring you interviews from planners who are in the trenches making it happen right now. These active church planners bear it all, share their successes, their failures, and what they'd wish they'd known when they were first starting out. Listen in to discover how God is working in their church plant.
Hey, church planner, welcome to Hardcore Church Planning. Today, I have a really cool guest because he's a friend of mine. He's also a mentor, and he is, I don't know how to put it, but I want to say that he discovered me for my role for North American Mission Board. He and I had breakfast, and he said, hey, would you like to come work for us? And without even thinking, I said yes, because I had been watching North American Mission Board, and I had never seen a denomination that treated church planners like the heroes in the same way that the Southern Baptists do. So my guest today is Rick Curtis. He is the National CPC Director for North American Mission Board. He is developing all of our church planning catalysts as leaders. He has also been the Western Regional Mobilizer. He is probably the fastest moving man I know in church planning right now, moving all over. He loves church planters and church planting. And anyways, Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Peyton. Man, what a great privilege it is to come and finally sit in this chair. So thank you very much.
It's long overdue. You know, it's funny because the people I think I work closely with, it's taken forever to get them on here. I don't know why that is, but, talk to my personal assistant. I'm sure I want to blame him. So,
yeah. Well, the mechanic always has the worst car in the neighborhood. It's kind of the same deal, close to home.
Shoe cobbler has holes in his shoes. It is true. But hey, Rick, tell us a little bit about how you came to faith and then how you got involved in church planting.
Man, absolutely. Hey, so I was born and raised in the church, but it never really meant a whole lot to me. Like anybody else's story, I was 19 years old before I truly heard the gospel and responded. Long story short, immediately went into ministry, felt the call of God almost immediately, did some missionary work, worked with youth with a mission, and came back trying to serve, didn't know how to serve. I just went to the church I grew up in, the one ironically that I never heard the gospel at, and served in that church for about 3.5 years, different denomination. And then exploring my call, junior high ministry, that kind of thing, went on to high school ministry. And that shifted me to, unbeknownst to me, it was a Saddleback church plant in North LA County, served there for 3.5 years. And then basically took the path that a lot of us take. We were a youth pastor, then associate pastor, then church planter in the 90s. And then from church planting, I went on to become a director of missions, which in our tribe is kind of a geographical guy, assigned a geographical area. And then was picked up shortly after Kevin came on with North American Mission Board. Kevin Nizell, our president, and that's it. But that's my short ministry history. In terms of my own spiritual journey, being raised in the church and never really hearing it, I guess, like so many of our stories, hit hard times in college, kind of introspection, trying to figure things out when you've got so many different warring factions in your brain. And a moment of clarity came through some personal violations. I just violated some relationships that I had, and very, very poorly, caused some great rifts. And one of those individuals that I had hurt dramatically reached through that pain and invited me to church. And that spoke something to me, that someone I could hurt so deeply would invite me to go to church. And I went that Sunday, and it wasn't 3 weeks or so before the conviction of the Holy Spirit fell upon me. And
Wow.
shortly after that, I walked the aisle. Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool, man. Well, tell us a little bit about your church, because I mean, you planted a church, and tell us a little bit about your church planting experience.
Man, yeah. So God used that powerfully to both train me, knock me upside the head, make me lose my hair, and various other things. But I would consider myself a successful church planter. We planted in the late 90s. We were planting in an area that the decade before had seen over 200 church plants, and only 2 or 3 of those were still standing after that 10 years. It was, for those who are familiar, it was the Antelope Valley area in northern LA County. And it made all the 80s and 90s lists of fastest growing communities in the nation. And so it just flocked. I mean, early church planters just flocked there. We didn't call it church planting really in the day. It was really church starting or starting churches or whatever. But it was just inundated with church planters. And
I always like to say it was church planting before it was cool, which makes it way cooler. Yeah. It's like a hipster thing.
All right. Yeah, I'll go with that. Hey, so there were signboards everywhere, and there was a decade of church planting, which made it really hard for us in the late 90s that were coming in and trying to clean up that disaster, because the general sense in the psychology in the area was, oh, another one, because they had seen a decade of church plants springing up and crashing. But we stuck to it. We built relationally at first, took that time. There was an era back then when it was all about marketing, get a billboard, get 60,000 mailers out and do whatever. And that was a typical model of church planting. And our church planters are so much smarter than that these days. They understand that relational engagement builds church planters and church plants. And so it's a different world. So we kind of did a hybrid. We were building relationships in my home, but at the same time doing the whole marketing scheme and the big blasts for the big launch and that kind of stuff. So it was funny in my naivete. I was like telling the guy that was working with me as a strategist with California Southern Baptist Convention, tell him I'm going to have 1,000 at my launch. We hear that today, Peyton, and we kind of chuckle, but we don't want to undermine guys' enthusiasm. It's great. We want that. But at the same time, we want to crash the ceiling down a little bit on them and say, ooh, let's get realistic on our expectations. So my 1,000 became 85 on our first service.
That's about like, well, that one snuck up on me, that train.
Oh, that's all right. Hey, so that 85 then became about 50, by which we built and we built and we built and we flash built. We hit over 200 in 9 months. And after 9 months, we were continuing to grow. And that's when my world came crashing down. God had to teach me some hard lessons about developing leaders and building leaders to carry the load. I did everything myself, building to that point. And to be frank, that was the one time in my life where I actually doubted my call. We crashed from plus 200 to 35 overnight at the loss of a space. And by the time I could get out of that space and clear the lease on that space, my entire savings was decimated. And it was really a hard lesson for us. But then we grew back. That's when the relational awareness came in, and we grew back relationally. It took us almost 2.5 years to build back to where we had originally gotten in 9 months, but it was healthy, and it was with built leaders, and it was with discipleship, and it brought us back to a place of stability that we could grow from that was strong.
See, and what's really cool about that is you mentioned how, you were doing things in your home, developing relationships. And I know from San Diego, us living kind of close together, that when I first started working together with you, I would bump into church planners like Dale Huntington and others. One of our most successful church planners, I asked him, so what made the big difference? And he's like, talking to Rick Curtis. And so I kept hearing that. And I think one of the really cool things is that, sometimes you have guys and they've just had the success. They haven't been through that breaking. And in many ways, they can't relate Like you still have church planners, or, when not too long ago, I know you're globetrotting and all over the place, but you were getting back to that, just having planners in your house. And that was such a rich time for them because you've been in the trenches, you've had the highs, but you've also had the lows. And that was one of the reasons I was really excited to have you come on here, because normally if I've seen you come and speak somewhere, it's not just I'm just going to come and spill some conversation. And normally you come super prepared. You've got visuals, and being a graphic artist doesn't hurt, but you've got visuals. I mean, you are on your game. And there was something you dropped when we were talking about church planting milestones. And I remember we were sitting there and I said, man, you need to come on the podcast. You have to talk. Nobody talks about the milestones of church planting. And that's what I'd like you to maybe spend the rest of our time unpacking today.
Yeah, great. You're referring to the milestones in like terms of time frame in church plant that I had mentioned to you before.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, I think it's not just milestones. I think there's dangers and things to be aware of, as well as those milestones in different phases in a church planter's life. And I see it. I work with scores of church planters all the time, and there's this repetitive pattern that I continue to see that I really want to scream from the mountaintops to our church planters. Hey guys, you got to be aware of these things, because if they blindside you, they're going to kill you. We all like a good mind tweak, if we're at a movie, but we don't like the mind tweak when it hits our lives. I mean, do you remember when in The Usual Suspects, when you find out who Kaiser Sose is, and you're like, what? It's like it's totally out of left field, just amazing. One of the biggest twists in movie history, and you're just blown away by that. That is a great thing to experience in the movies, but it is not a good thing to experience when you're a church planter. So, so I talk about all the time about things that happen in the 6 to 12 month time frame, the 12 to 18 month time frame, and then 18 to 24, 24 to 36, which by that time, most church planters are kind of getting their groove. But it's particularly those first 18 months, man, that'll just kill you if you're not aware of certain things. You want me to just keep on throwing things out there?
So what would the first milestone be for a church planter?
Well, I don't know if it's a first milestone, but it's a first awareness issue. I think you really need, as well as I do, man. We use, you and I, when we talk, we use the terminology about our church planters being our heroes, and they're in the foxholes, and it's kind of hard being almost 20 years out of when I launched my church plant, to have any street cred. But man, when you're saturated and you're around these guys all the time, you kind of feel like, and please don't misunderstand, there's no ego here, but you find it like you're the general and you're trying to help your troops that are in the foxholes to get the war won, but some of these guys they go out with so much excitement and gusto, and it's like they're unaware that burnout and self-doubt is right there, because you go out strong. You're a church planter, man. You're a hero. You're focused. You've got the weapons. You've got the guns loaded. You're in the hole, and it's again, it's like that scene where here's a quick scene of recent history. You've got Wonder Woman jumping out of that foxhole and taking on all that fire, and everybody around her is inspired by it, and they all look at her, and she jumps out there, boom, and the bullets are coming, bouncing off her shield, and all that. And I want to say, guys, you're not Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
You don't have the tools yet.
You're speaking my love language, by the way. You're speaking my love language. I like this. Yeah. Kaiser Soze, Wonder Woman. This is a fantastic podcast.
All right. Yeah, I know you're kind of a movie buff. So that's good. But, but that's what I want to say to our guys. I say, look, burnout is coming if you're not careful. Self-doubt is coming. When the bullets start flying, man, You have to be aware that that's coming. And that comes in a lot of different fashions. And before I talk about some of the dangers of how that takes place in that first 6 month to 12 month time frame, I would say this. There's a talk I do about failure, and it's a long 35, 40-minute presentation, all to say 2 words: fail fast. I want to tell every one of my church planners, you're gonna fail. That's part of growth. It is an intimate part of growth. You have to fail to grow. But when you fail fast. Get back off your knees, dust them off, and say, whoa, that didn't go too well, but we're going to keep on driving. If you're not expecting the failure, if you're not expecting the burnout, if you're not expecting the self-doubt, it's going to kill you. But if you go in with the attitude that I'm going to get through this as quick as possible, I'm going to expect it, and I'm going to welcome it, and I'm going to get back up on my feet, and I'm going to keep on plugging away. That's an important set to have.
That's great.
So 6 to 12 months, man. Here's some of the red flags I think every church planner really needs to look out for. And they don't realize people are attracted to new things. And there are people out there. Hear me, church planter. If you're listening to this, hear me, open your ears and hear me. There are people that have no authority in their life. They work in a cubicle and they're beaten down from 8 to 5. They have no authority in their home. Their kids have run them over. They have a spouse that runs them down. They have absolutely no authority anywhere. And they will come into your church and they will seek authority because it's easy to get. And that's not the guy. That's not the gal that you want having authority in your church. Be on the guard for those people that want to serve immediately or have a position or title immediately. Really take your time with that. Use discernment. That is a huge red flag. And I've seen more church planners, our church plans, just destroyed and decimated because someone's seeking authority in their church plan. And you just got to be aware of that.
I would totally agree with that. I've seen that so many times where absolutely the henpeck guy ends up just becoming a monster once they're given that little bit of power in the church. They're such nice guys, and then you put them on as an elder, whatever, and they my mentor taught me that. I served in Lloyd Jones's church under one of the guys he appointed. He said, once we put him on as an elder, it's like he became a completely different person. And I think that's why Paul says don't lay hands on a man hastily, but absolutely. There, I have noticed the same exact thing. It's funny when you see these. I picked up on that too. This must be true. But, so what are some other things at that 6 to 12 month?
Yeah. So it has to do with reading body language and reading signals. And just like this person that has no authority, just to have your self-awareness real high. Got to work on your emotional intelligence as a young church planner. You got to be aware of body language from people and that kind of thing, especially your spouse. Your spouse sends signals that she doesn't even know she's sending in the stresses and in the environment of a church plant. And you and I both know, Peyton, it's anecdotal, but I would say 20% to 30% of our church plants probably fail because just the spouse does not have that same call. Now, we try to get at that with assessments. We try to really unpack that in the Prepare and Rich and make sure that she's feeling a sense of call for church planting as well. But it's not just about the ultimate church plant, whether she's called to that or not. It's about the little things that roll off of our backs as church planters, but fall heavy on hers. And so a lot of the times, man, church planners just need to read the signals that the spouse is sending, and be attentive to that, because that's going to tank you in the first 12 months anyway. That's the most stressful time of the church plant, those first 12 months. And a lot of that comes, I think, with working in the urgent and not the important. You can look at some of my church planner videos. Do you mind if I do a plug here?
I was going to plug them if you didn't. So, yeah.
Well, I do a urgent versus important, a time priority tyranny of the urgent video. It's a it's a short 2-minute video that's on curtis.net. You can go to curtis.net, curtis.net, click on church plant videos. And there's a list of church plant church plant videos that I do from time to time. I just do them spur of the moment. But there's one on urgency versus importance. And I think every church planter needs to see that. We have a tendency to work in the urgent, non-important, because it seems like we're doing something good. But urgent, non-important work is simply spinning your wheels. It's everybody that comes to you that has an urgent need, and you want to be the best church planter you can be. So you're addressing needs that really are frivolous or should be handed off to somebody else. You need to concentrate on the non-urgent, important issues that drive the church forward. If it's not important, don't do it. Hand it off to somebody else. Because that plays into the burnout. It plays into the self-doubt. I mean, you can feel good about yourself if you're doing urgent, non-important stuff all the time. If everything's urgent, but it's not really important, you feel like you're doing a lot. You're always responding. You're always working. You're always getting the accolades and the pats on the back. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But none of it's important for driving the organization the way Father wants you to drive it forward. You're just spinning your wheels. Concentrate on the urgent, non-urgent, important things that you have to do to drive things forward.
That's
so
good.
basically, those are the killers in the 6 to 12 month. I think the real killers, those are more awareness based in 6 to 12, because you're getting your sea legs on you. You're kind of learning and accommodating and acclimating, but it's the 12 to 18 months that I've found is probably the most brutal.
I agree. People ask me, what's the hardest thing about church planning? And I say the second year, like without hesitation. That's always my answer, the second year. So let's hear.
Yeah. So let's go into 12 to 18 month time frame. Hey, I'm going to excite you even more with another analogy here. 12 to 18 months, you start feeling like Phil Connors. He's the reporter in Groundhog Day. They've assigned him to do the reporting for Groundhog Day 4 years in a row, and he's frustrated. He sees himself as more capable than he is. And then he wakes up, and on top of the frustration of 4 years of reporting on a groundhog, he realizes that he's in a day loop where he's going to have to report the rest of his life every single day doing the exact same thing and trying something different to get a different result. And man, once that mentality sets in, once you're suffering from the Groundhog Day thing, you're not very far from throwing in the towel. So I've got some things I would like to share that I think that need to raise awareness, but you've got to do everything you can to break out of that mode of repetition and just frivolous actions. And I mean, I need to be careful, because most actions are important and necessary, except for, like when we talked about before, if you're just responding to non-important stuff. But routine actions, if you don't bring some variety in or mix it up or be aware that you need to delegate and get assistance, man, I'll tell you what, it'll kill you. So for example, if you're 12 months in and you have not built some kind of leadership pipeline, you're in trouble. That's what I learned. I learned it hard. It took me 2 years to learn it, but I was doing everything myself. And now it's a difference. I mentioned earlier the importance of building your church on relationships, but it's different. Relationship building is different than leader building, right?
Right.
You can be in a relational context with everyone in your church up to a certain number, 50 to 75 most typically. But that is not the same as building leaders. You need to intentionally build leaders. I like to say to church planners at 12 months in, I say, tell me who your leaders are. And they'll say, well, we got this guy and they describe tasks. They don't describe leaders. They describe tasks, which tell me that he's not a leader. He's a manager. Assigning tasks is different than leading it's management. And a leader, I had a lot of ditties, little ditties that I would use with my leadership team when I was church planning, and I didn't come up with them all. I heard them somewhere. Most of them. There's a couple I came up with, but one that I used to say to my leadership team all the time is give your best to your best and let your best do the rest. And we just repeated that every time. I just repeated it until it became part of our culture, because I wanted to instill in people that developing leaders that can make authoritative decisions is paramount. You need to learn power and release people, not just command and control. Command and control leaders don't go as far as empower and release leaders do. As well as I do, Peyton, one guy can only lead maybe 75 people. Yeah. You look at the state of the church across the nation, and it's full of churches that run 75 people. And what does that tell me? It tells me that they're not developing leaders. I like to say it a different way. I like to say, what if I could guarantee you 75 more people in your church? What? How to do that? Build a leader. Yeah. Build an intentionally empowered leader that you release to get things done. And if you turn around and do that, I just through experience, man, I can almost guarantee you for every leader you truly build, God will give you 50 to 75, maybe even 100 people. I've seen it time and time and time again. And if you don't build those leaders, you're going to stay plateaued right there, 75 people, 100 people at the most. So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's so important because even, historians look at D-Day, the D-Day landing, and they say that one of the major contributors to the success of the Allied amphibious attack was that Hitler's leadership structure was such that they had to go straight to him for any major decisions. And of course it was, 3, 4 in the morning, and they were afraid, his generals were afraid to wake him. They didn't realize how serious the threat was, but as it became, they said, we need to let him sleep. He gets really angry. And his generals were actually neutered. They couldn't make decisions. And so by the time that Hitler was awake and they felt that they could call him, it was too late. The Allies already had this foothold that ensured victory into Normandy. So, that's lost the entire World War II. World wars have risen and fallen on leadership. And in the beginning, I think like church planning, in the beginning, that, supreme leader, that looked great and it led to the ascension of Hitler, but ultimately it led to its defeat, that same thing. And I think church planners go through very much a similar thing. Like what you're saying here. And, Rick, everything that you're saying is just pure gold. And I hope church planners that you, will connect with Rick, in future. He runs Curtis.net. That's his blog. It is one of the cool things about Rick is, I remember when I was getting to know Rick at one point, he's like, hey, pray for my brother. He hasn't been seen for a while. He's hiking Everest, and the Curtis family gets around, man. And Rick has been all over the globe. When he shares with you, church planning analogies, they're usually from all over the world, places he himself has been. And some of those things, he comes up with things. I think, man, that is amazing. Where'd you get that from? And so check him out at Curtis.net, and also his YouTube channel. Rick Curtis has a lot of the same of what you're hearing here, more of the same leadership gold. And you can check that out, Rick Curtis YouTube channel. And, Rick, any final thoughts before we sum up here?
Yeah, man, there's so much. I've taken so long, and I apologize, but if I can do some bullet points here, we may not have time to unpack them, but I think they're very important. I think, 12 to 18 months, you got to realize, especially 12 months, at the 12-month barrier, forced relocation or negotiated relocation is traumatic to the church, right? So if you've been planting somewhere, you got to expect that some kind of deal with the school or whatever is going to shift. The cost is going to get more expensive, or you're going to be forced to relocate, or you have to negotiate because of space or time or whatever. Just be aware of that. here's, huge to the 12 to 18 month time frame is this: stop pastoring. Well, let me say it this way. The biggest danger for a church planter is to stop planting and start pastoring. The shift from winning souls and building relationships to maintaining the church is detrimental to a church planter. It usually happens in 12 to 18 months. Don't stop doing what you did to plant the church. Don't shift into pastor mode. It's harmful. You can do that. You can do you can minister, of course. You can be the pastor, of course, but don't shift out of planting mode. Don't do it. And then, hey, let's shift real quick because there's a few other things I would say about that time frame. Maybe I can come back another time and work on those. But 18 to 24 months, there's one or two big ones in 18 to 24 months that you need to be aware of. Yeah, this is the main one in the 18 to 24 month period. Key people, your core team, your people that you've built the deepest relationships with and you've built the deepest relationships with, are going to leave. Chances are a portion of them are going to leave. Key people that started that church with you, they started that church with you because they're starters, right? Starters don't stick around when the church doesn't feel like a start anymore. Once it's established, once it's going, 18 to 24 months. I wish I would have known that. 18 to 24 months in, not to when right before we crashed from 200 plus to 35 people. But right before that, all my leaders were flocking out on me, and I could not understand why. I didn't realize, I had recruited the best starter people that there are. They wanted something new. Now, you might call this the multiplication window, because if you're smart and you get ahead of it, you can start something new. We talk a lot about planting our first plant within the next 2 years and multiplying our church plant. If you plan it right, you can use those starters to go out and do another church that you are the multiplying pastor of. And that's a great way to do it because you're going to lose them anyway. Why not discern who those people are and empower them to do a new thing elsewhere and multiply? The big thing in that, another big thing in that 18 to 24 months is keep asking. Church planter, hear me. This to me is important. This is a core value for me. I would sit with my leadership team and I would say this. I say, guys, tell me what I don't know that I really need to know. If you're not familiar with the Johari window, look it up. Johari window. It takes our knowledge into 4 quadrants. Things we know, things we know we don't know, things we don't know we know, things we don't know we don't know. And it's that 4th quadrant, the things we don't know that will kill our ministry. Things surprise us because we didn't see it coming, and we need to know what they are. And your people hear things and know things and are dealing with things in the congregation that they're trying not to bring to you or they don't want to bring to you. And you need to sit down with them and say, tell me what I need to know that I don't know. It's like, here we go again. When Warden Norton opens his box for shoes in Shawshank and Andy's shoes are in there and everything makes sense. And he's like, oh, it's all over for me. Right. You don't want that to happen to you in church planning. You got to know what you don't know. So keep that mindset where you're always asking the people you trust, your leaders, your secondary leaders, tell me what I need to know. Make sure you've constructed the relationship environment so that they can say anything they want to say to you without fear of ramification or anything, that it's all about team building. It's all about future. And this is Father's church. It's not your church. So whatever we can say to make it better, let's do it. So those would be the big things for me. Like I said, we could go all day with it. Much craziness, but I know we got to wind things down.
We might get you back. I mean, this is all good stuff, man. Like you said, every one of these points could be its own podcast. I mean, these are, and I agree with you. These are the lessons that people walk blindly into, and you can learn it the easy way by listening to the wisdom of others that have gone before, who are there for you to mentor you and to teach you. And I know that's very much your heart. Or you can go, I don't need to listen to anybody and learn the hard way, because you're going to learn it either way.
Yeah, you're going to learn. And that's where fail fast comes in.
Absolutely.
If I can encourage every one of you guys that are listening, get a mentor. Find a mentor. You may not agree with everything he says. You may not agree with his methodologies, but if he's 10 years down the road ahead of you, you may not agree with his method, style, anything, but there's still stuff you can learn from it because he's walked a road that you haven't walked. Get yourself a mentor. Ask somebody.
You know, when I was younger, I had one of the best mentors I think you could ever have, and he would call me up and tell me things. And I think sometimes just when you're a young guy, you're like, yeah, cool. I'll tuck that away. I'll consider that. And I remember after probably the fourth or fifth time biting it hard, just looking at my wife and saying, next time he calls me or next time he says something, if I don't do it, smack me, punch me in the head. I don't care what you have to do. Remind me that at this moment I have told you, make me do what he says.
Yeah, exactly.
I won't see it at the time because I'm an idiot, but it's instilled wisdom. A slap, a punch, it can do wonders.
Absolutely. I'll punch you next time I see you.
I'd probably be better for it. So speaking of punching people, at the end of every podcast, we do this thing, and it involves a little smack, but a little smack talk. But what we like to ask, and this may even be the question that all of our church planners wait for, and the train, there it is, to signal. Like on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, when you're getting to the end, the trolley comes through, and that guy hated me. But one of the questions that we ask is if you, and it changes every time, the contenders are an ever-changing cast of characters, but we try to pick people that everyone knows. So I'm going to pick somebody who you know very well. And, of course, the Sin Conference has been making its round. We've had Long Beach, and there's Dallas and Florida. So Sin Conference, has been making a rounds. If you guys can get to a Sin Conference, Florida hasn't taken place yet, right? Florida is still we're waiting for.
It's coming up in 2 weeks.
So, make sure if you're around that area, definitely go check that out. It was amazing. All of my, church planner team in Long Beach, they had not been to one yet. I went to the one in Nashville, blew them away. But they were like, man, that was probably the most incredible thing we've been to. Definitely go check that out. But,
hey, if you're in Orlando, let me throw in, if you're in Orlando, hunt me down. I'll be there. I'd love to shake your hand and say hi.
Absolutely. Where can they find you on Twitter, Rick? What's your Twitter handle?
BR Rick Curtis. BR Rick Curtis.
Okay. Ding, ding, ding. Here's the bell for the match. So what we do, all that to set it up for this. If you've been to the Sin Conference, you know Kevin Ezell. So here comes the question. If you were to get into a physical fist fight with Kevin Ezell, who would win?
He would, because I'd let him pummel me. I would drop to the floor and say, "Beat on, sir." I really enjoy Kevin's leadership, and it's not fair to ask about the president of the organization you work for.
It's not Peyton. Fair. You know why? Because Kevin is the best at smack talk, period. Like, you don't even want to answer that question with Kevin, because he's going to get you later I've been to home week, man. He's going to make you feel it.
Hey, let me tell you this. So whoever would win the fist fight will remain disclosed, but the ramifications would be brutal, because you think I have relationships with planters. Kevin Ezell goes over the top with building relationships with the planters, and it's amazing to watch him do that. So if I did win that match, I'd have every church planter in North America beating the tar out of me. So I wouldn't. That's why I'd just hit the mat and say, "Go ahead, beat me up. I'm good."
Yeah, and I think that's worthy, because it was actually before you and I had that breakfast. We were in Buena Park, and we were doing a planter care event, and you came and spoke at it. It was actually something that you said that made me want to work for NAM. And I remember you said two things. You said, and they were about Kevin. You had said when he loves planters so much that he carries like a dossier that has the number of planners in every major city in America. And he knows how many planners, like he'll go in and say, hey, how many planners we got in the city? And if people don't know, people in leadership over that city don't know, he'll say, no, there's this many. And he prays over those cities every day. And the other thing is, here he is a CEO of the largest church planting network on the planet. And he basically said, I remember you saying that when he flies into a town, and particularly even in your area, you'd say, I wouldn't even know he's here, but my church planners would tell me, yeah, he contacted us and said, let's go to dinner. And you're like, and it just really shows his heart for church planting, the planter on the ground. And I remember when I heard that, I thought, man, I want to work for a guy like that. I want to work with someone who has that heart for planners at that level. So, you and I our respect for him is mutual, not because he's our boss, but because, as you mentioned earlier, he's a leader. He is a good leader and he inspires us. So, hey, Rick, appreciate you coming on. And again, guys, it's curtis.net. And also it is, Rick Curtis on the YouTube channel. Catch up with Rick. And Rick, thanks for being our guest today.
You got it, man. Thanks, Peyton. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I appreciate you so much. You're knocking it out of the park, dude.
Thank you, brother. Well, hey, guys, thanks for joining us for Hardcore Church Planting today. Our guest has been Rick Curtis, Regional Mobilizer for the Western U.S. and Canada, and also National Developer for Leadership for Church Planting Catalyst for the North American Mission Board. Arnold, sign us out.
Remember, if you are called to church planting, go hardcore or go home.
You've been listening to Hardcore Church Planting. Hardcore Church Planting has been brought to you by the Church Planter Podcast and the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the App Store for both Apple and Android devices. If you like this episode, leave us a positive review. If you didn't like this episode, we'll be happy to give you your money back.